Wet breath fogs in the humid dawn. A hand hovers over a bank of wildflowers, fingers shy of the petals. The air holds something faint, like citrus, like the top notes of a perfume bottle someone has forgotten in a jacket pocket. Listen closely now. The petals still remember. I'm Sam Nang. Find a dark room, put your headphones on, and listen closely. Tonight's story is called Petal Ledger. This is nature's dread. Our protagonist is a volunteer, call her Mara, who walks the reserve almost every morning. She knows the route by sound, the way frogs pause their chorus, the particular rasp of a beekeeper's jacket, the smell of wet earth after the night's heat. On a slow, heavy morning in late summer, she stopped, not because anything obvious was wrong, but because her nose kept returning to the same place, a cluster of small, pale flowers that seemed to hold a human scent, like swallowed sunlight. At first, she did what most of us do. She told herself it was the wind, or someone's soap on a passing runner. She did not reach to pick a blossom. Instead, she took photos, close, careful shots that captured leaves, petals, a timestamp, the dew still clinging like glass beads. She resisted the small, panicked impulse to take a sample. That restraint? Critically important. Do not pick flowers. Do not swab him. Over the next few mornings, the scent returned. Not everywhere, only on that species, only along a narrow spur that traced the understory like a faint river. Mara kept notes. Time of day, humidity, a photo file with embedded metadata. When she mapped the intensity, the trail overlapped an old missing person search perimeter from decades earlier. That overlay was the first real impossible thing. Something in the landscape was holding a record. No, a record with noise, with decay, with all the messiness of weather and other people. Still, the pattern was there. This is where science steps in, not to dramatize, but to explain limits. A plant physiologist I spoke with described petals and cuticular waxes as tiny sponges for airborne molecules. Fragrances are volatile organic compounds, little chemical travelers. When the air carries them past a petal, some of those molecules stick, absorbed into waxes on the surface. Temperature, humidity, the oiliness of a particular blossom, all of that changes how long a scent clings. It's not memory like human memory. It's adsorption and release. The flowers don't whisper names. They hold traces, faint, degraded, and easily confused.
An analytical chemist walked me through what happens when you try to read those traces. The tool of choice is headspace analysis and gas chromatography mass spectrometry, the old GCMS. In plain terms, you enclose a sample, collect the air above it, and see what molecules float up. But every step adds uncertainty. Ambient contamination, someone's laundry on a nearby trail, a vehicle in the lane, even the volunteer's own perfume, these are all background signals. Labs use blanks and field controls to separate the real from the accidental. Chain of custody matters. Without that, an intriguing pattern becomes speculation.
And then there's the search and rescue perspective. The coordinator I spoke to said, scent evidence can suggest a direction, but it must be corroborated. Dogs, witness reports, historical maps, and hard physical clues, those matter more. If a volunteer finds something like Mara did, do not become the detective alone. Photograph, timestamp, preserve metadata, and call the authorities or the park's administrators. That way, the data can be treated properly and the site preserved.
Mara did the difficult, correct thing. She called the family quietly and the park authorities. The overlay was low confidence by forensic standards, but a map is a map. Once the accredited lab agreed to a controlled test, the corridor shifted from an intuition to an organized effort. Daylight rewalks, passive samplers deployed at fixed points, procedural blanks in places known to be clean, and a strict log for who touched what and when. There was hope, sharp and brittle, and a hum of tension under every step.
The field test felt clinical and ritual at once. Technicians in the morning light clipped nothing. They mounted samplers near flowers, recorded wind and temperature, and kept people at a respectful distance. Cameras recorded everything. When a sampler came back to the lab, the journey was documented, where it sat, how it was stored, who handled the paperwork. The GCMS runs returned peaks and valleys, signatures that matched certain fragrance compounds, but also other volatiles common in the landscape. The lab report, careful and plain, said, "Signals present, but equivocal, nothing definitive." Science had pushed the question forward, but the answer stayed shy.
Afterward, agencies tempered public statements. The family was told what the data suggested and what it did not. Experts emphasized the three big caveats: environmental volatility, molecules move and dilute; contamination risk, humans are everywhere and leave trails; and statistical uncertainty. The corridor could be a real trace or a coincidence framed by too many small signals. That kind of restraint felt like an act of respect. The land and the people involved deserved neither sensational headlines nor reckless assumptions.
And yet, look at the image in your mind now. A slow pan of dewy petals at first light, each bead like a tiny lens holding a world. Beautiful, suggestive, unresolved. The corridor on the map remains a corridor, not a verdict. The flowers kept traces that pointed toward a question, and for a moment a human story seemed close enough to touch. Then, like morning mist, the certainty thinned.
If this episode stayed with you, here are 3 practical things to remember. 1. Do not pick, swab, or disturb flowers or potential evidence. 2. Photograph with timestamps and record weather notes and file metadata. And 3. Contact local police, park staff, or an accredited laboratory before sharing raw data or attempting your own sampling. Leave no trace matters, not just for ecology, but for evidence integrity. This is where restraint becomes an ethical act.
I'll leave you with this last image. The reserve quiet again. Sunlight narrowing between trunks, and the petals holding the memory of a scent that may mean nothing or everything. Pay attention to the details. The threads converge, sometimes just enough for us to notice. Sometimes that noticing changes nothing. Sometimes it opens a door. I'm Samnang. If this story stayed with you, subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share it with someone who loves the wild and the quietly strange. And a final practical plea. If you ever find a scent pattern or a trace, photograph, preserve metadata, and call the professionals. Until next time, check the corners.